All right, it looks to be heading towards 9:30. Well, my time anyway. Hi Emma, good to see you. Thanks for joining me this morning. All right, I'll give you a few minutes just to see if there's anybody else who's going to join us live this morning. I've had a couple of people let me know that they are busy, and I understand that the time frames aren't going to work for everybody. But totally, this will be available on replay. So for those of you who need to catch up, that is something that is that you will be able to do. All right. I know it's a bit hard with the time zones because I start off the post in the evening and the live for me is then the following morning. And so for anybody who is in the Australian time zone, it's a bit hard then to do the homework while you're sleeping. And so that's fine. If you need to then do the homework after the live, it's not an issue. And if you have any questions about yesterday's homework, you can always raise it in tomorrow's live. Hi Ben, how are you? I'm going to try and remember that Tim Sim is Ben, but apologies if I do call you Tim. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is in your time zone there at the moment. So yeah, if you do need to do the homework after the live because you were sleeping in between the post going out and the live happening, that is totally fine. I'm happy to backtrack in the future lives and cover anything that maybe comes up for you. For those who it's a better time zone, so I know we have quite a number from the UK and also a few from the United States. So hopefully for you, those times work a little bit better. But if you need to, these replays are available. You obviously have the information, the daily training in your email and also in the Facebook post. So you can get the information there and catch up at any time through the challenge. You might also find, and this happens to me a lot, when you learn a new technique and you start to pay more attention to that and you're looking for it, you might find it later on. And so in a couple of days, you might suddenly realize that you've seen something which helps you to establish baseline. So certainly we can come back and recover any of that at any stage. All right, so according to me, we are a couple of minutes in, so I'm going to get started. And obviously, if anybody joins us along the way, then that is fine too. All right, so this one, I'll start off a little bit by talking about the challenge, then we'll talk about the daily training, and then we'll talk about the homework. So the challenge itself, as you would have heard, it's 5 days. So we're going to do 5 of these lives over the next 5 days, with the final live being sort of the end of the challenge so that you can draw together everything that we've learned, plus there'll be the final 5th day technique that you'll be learning. I am sending information out on email, and obviously you guys have found the Facebook group, so that's fantastic. The interaction from your side of things can happen in the Facebook group, but obviously you can get the information from me wherever is easiest for you. Okay, so if you have any questions about the challenge, the training, or the homework, you can pop them in now, and I will start to think about those as I'm running through this. Or if you're just wanting a general, involved in the conversation, then I'm happy with that too. So as we mentioned in the training, communication is made up of the 3 components, being the verbal side of things, so the words that are coming from your mouth, your body language, which is what we're here to learn all about, and then your voice tone. And voice tone is things like the pitch, it can include the speed of your speech, basically anything to do with speech that's not the actual words that they're saying. Okay, so when we talk about these 3 components, as I mentioned, there was some studies done in the 1960s by Albert Mehrabian, and what he found was that the verbal component made up 7% of our interactions that we have, which is a really small percentage if you think about it overall. The body language made up 55%, and then the verbal tone was the rest with 38%. Now, one of the things that has been maybe missed when those figures have been given out in other places is that that was specific to the scenario and the examples that he was using in his studies. And you can go and Google it, but it was to do with one-on-one interactions. There was no distractions happening, and they compared it to things like phone calls and those sort of things. So what we have learnt since then is that, yes, the percentage of verbal component is very small compared to the other two components. That's correct. However, the actual percentages themselves aren't quite as scary as have come out. I've just got somebody asking to join, so just let me approve that one there. Just 1 second. All right, all good. Oops, hang on a second. I'm having, you know how you start these challenge things and then Facebook goes, you know what, I'm going to make your life just a little bit more interesting by every time you click on one group, I'm going to automatically flick you to another group. And it's driving me insane because it makes it really hard. All right, I think we have that sorted now. Okay, sorry about that. So as I was saying, the components are, the body language is the biggest component by far of the communication that we're having. And you might have picked this up in relation to, you know, if somebody sends you an email and you maybe don't quite understand what it is that they're trying to say, or you think you understand and you respond in a certain way, and they come back to you and go, what were you talking about? That's an example of us only receiving the smallest component of the communication. We're only getting the words when we receive an email. We can't see their voice tone, or can't hear their voice tone. We can't see their body language when we receive that. So a lot of people will prefer to actually have a face-to-face conversation. Now, I'm really thankful for the explosion in technology that's happened due to COVID. I work regionally, so I actually have all of my meetings used to be on the phone, and now we're able to have them on Teams or Zoom or that sort of thing. So we get that extra bit of interaction that you miss if you're not having that face-to-face meeting. And it's helpful, it really is. When we're looking at other people's body language, we're obviously looking for cues to help guide us into what it is that they're thinking and what it is that they're saying. So we're not always looking for deception or for them to be saying something that doesn't match with their body language. That's not the only reason why we look at body language. We also look at body language to try and increase the understanding that we have about what the person is trying to tell us about. So it might be that they're telling us a story and we're wondering, you know, are they really engaged with this story? How do they feel about this story? Sometimes somebody will tell you a story and you're like, I'm not quite sure how you want me to respond here. Am I meant to be feeling sorry for you? Am I meant to be feeling mad at the other person? Like, you know, by getting those extra cues can help us to respond to them in a way that makes them feel heard, basically. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to add before I jump into establishing baseline was the idea that remember that body language doesn't always have to relate to what it is that they're saying. So body language is actually in response to what's happening in our brain. If you are sitting here right now, like I'm doing, and I'm talking to you and you see some unusual body language, it may be because I've gone off in my brain and I'm thinking about what it is that I need to do after I finish this live. And maybe that's something that worries me, or maybe that's something that's really exciting. It's not, I've got to go to work. But what it is that my body language will be showing you what my brain is thinking, while my words are actually pretty much subconsciously just happening because I've done this a lot of times before and I know what it is that I'm talking about. So don't always presume that what you're seeing is a reaction to you. It may be completely unrelated, or it may be something that's happening that you're not aware of. So, you know, I gave the example in the email of them have suddenly seen a spider behind you, and they're reacting to that rather than the words that you're saying. Let me know if any of that is making sense for you guys, or if, and even if you're in the replay, put the comments up because I will read them later to make sure that what I'm providing to you is useful. But yeah, let me know if any of that is resonating or if you are already all over this, because I have people who are brand new to body language. I have those who are teaching autistic people. I have those who are, learning psychology, and so they're all over it. I have people on all levels. So I'm trying to pitch this about in the middle, but certainly let me know if there's something you're not sure about or if you're wanting to take it to that next level a little bit. Okay. Establishing baseline. How are we going for time? Good. Excellent. So establishing baseline. This is the one thing that a lot of people who are looking at body language often miss, or it's the one thing that I get hammered on when I say, if you see this, it means that. And especially on my TikTok videos, because they're only 20 seconds, it's a bit hard to explain establishing baseline and give a cue and its meaning. But when we establish baseline, it's all about making sure that we understand the person's normal behaviors before we start to look at what it is that they're doing that might be giving us our cues and our indicators as to how they're feeling. So often you will know with your own family or those that are close to you, you'll know actually not only their normal baseline, but you will know their cues that they give that signal something. So it might be, sorry, I'll slow down a little bit. So it might be that your children have a little smile that they give when they're telling something that's not quite true. Or your husband might have a little smile when, he comes home and he starts telling you a story about something that happened at work, and you know that it's going to be a funny story because he has this way of just going, you're never going to believe, but he has it written on his face rather than actually saying the words. But we can also use establishing baseline for strangers and people that we don't know overly well. So it can be that they... when you meet them for the first time, if you're paying attention to them and not just thinking about what it is that you're going to say when you walk up to them, but actually paying attention to them, you can start to see their normal body language. So it might be that they have a disability and that causes them to stand in a slightly awkward way that we would see as being an uncomfortable stance, but that might just be the way that they stand normally. It could be that they are neurodiverse, and so they may not be able to maintain eye contact, and so we wouldn't then be able to use their eye contact and their length of eye contact and the strength of their eye contact and things as a cue. We also need to be careful of people from other cultures. Now, I will touch on this a little bit later in the week, but body language itself is across all cultures, but gestures are not. Gestures are things that we actually learn from those around us. So being aware that if they are from other cultures, then their gestures may be very different. I will just add that most of what I talk about is Western culture and specifically Australian culture, because obviously that's where I'm from. But certainly I'm always keen to learn about other cultures. So send me through some interesting gestures from your culture if you know of some. Okay, so when we're meeting this person, we're paying attention to them, we're thinking about whether they possibly have a disability, neurodiverse. It doesn't even matter, we're not making diagnoses here. We're just focusing on whether they are actually going to show these signals that are their normal behaviors and aren't actually cues. I'm going to take a drink of coffee. Let me just pause there for 1 second. I've learnt to put it in a travel mug so it doesn't go cold while I'm doing these. All right, so one of the things with reading body language in photographs is that it's actually really hard to establish baseline in a photograph. And the reason for that is you have no context, you have no lead up to that conversation the photo's been taken of. You have no afterwards and then what happens next. So establishing baseline for a photograph is pretty much impossible unless you've seen multiple photographs, which then means that any analysis that we're doing, or any theories that we're making, or any conclusions that we're coming to in relation to a photograph, we really need to put some boundaries around those to say, look, this is what I see. However, these are all the things that could be the issue. And these are all the things that, might be influencing what it is that I'm seeing. Now, hopefully for you guys, you aren't having to analyze any photographs this week, but it is just a really good stepping stone to say, look, make sure that no matter what you do in this process, you need to make sure that the very first thing you do is establish baseline. Now, some people say, okay, well, how can I actually establish baseline with somebody that I've never met? Like, how do I physically do this? And as I said, one of the best ways is just to observe them. Now, if you're in a group, it does make it much, much easier, because with the group, you can then, maybe withdraw just a little bit from the conversation and observe what's happening and see the way that they're interacting with others. Otherwise, you can actually start to, obviously have your normal conversation that you would, but look at what happens when the conversation topic changes. Does their behavior change? So our baseline is our normal across the board. But if you start to talk about something that is a little bit contentious or controversial, or even, it might just be something that they don't know anything about, and you will start to see that if you're having, like, when the conversation changes, that you will start to see these behaviors change. So they will stop being at baseline, and they will either move into a more positive type emotion or a more negative type emotion. So basically, I think that's what, let me just check my notes. Yes, so pretty much that is what was covered in the daily training. Let me know if you have any questions around that, or any questions around the homework tasks. So when you went out and you looked, did you look at just somebody who you knew and maybe thought about what it was that you would normally see from them? Or did you go and actually view maybe somebody you don't know very well at all, like if you're at work or even in the shop or something like that? For those of you who haven't done the homework yet, it's okay, that's fine. Just have a think about it and put your thoughts into the group. For me, one of the really easy ones to think about is my own behaviors. So we have a lot of behaviors that we probably don't think about, but one that I know for me is that I like to twiddle my rings. I like to twist my rings around on my finger. Now, this is a sign of nervousness and anxiety if we're talking about body language. However, if you know me and you're aware of my baseline, you would know that twiddling my rings is something that I do when I'm bored, when I'm thinking, like it just happens all of the time. And in fact, I'm not wearing my ring at the moment because otherwise I'll spend the whole time playing with it. But you can actually use that as a sign for me, is that when it starts to get really dramatic, like when I am constantly doing it and maybe I'm like flicking it really fast, the normal movement for me becomes more exaggerated. And so that would be a cue that I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable or a bit nervous, and I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. So you can even put in there, maybe like in the homework, you can put in there what it is that you do that you know could be seen as a cue, but maybe isn't. And I know I have some friends who have ADHD and possibly, even pushing towards autistic spectrum, and they can't look people in the eyes. Now, I have this one friend who's realized that this is a big issue because she needs to, interact with people at work and things. She's in, it's customer service things, so it's not people who know her overly well. So she's learnt to look just here, because for her then she's not looking them in the eyes, but for the other person it feels like they're looking them in the eyes. So for her, she would be able to put as her homework that for me, looking somebody in the eyes is really difficult. And so I know that this could be something that people would need to consider when establishing my baseline. So think about those sort of things when you're doing your homework. And certainly what's going to happen is each day we're going to build on this. So this is the very start. Don't make any analysis till you've established baseline. And once we've done that, we are going to spend the rest of the week looking at exactly what the other person is communicating to you with their hidden messages. So I think that is everything in relation to the training. Does anybody have any questions? That's okay. As I said, pop them in the comments under this video or in the comment thread for the day one challenge. And let me know, because I want to make sure that the information that I'm providing to you is actually the information that you want. There's no point me sitting here and telling you all about the technical side of analyzing body language if you just want to know how to interact with this person at work who you just don't seem to be able to understand. So certainly make sure you give me that feedback. The other feedback that I'm looking for was that too much text in the daily post? Would you prefer to receive it also as a video? I can record it. I've got them written out, but I can also record it for those of you who maybe don't want to read quite so much all in one go. So pop that information in the group as well. And I am going to head off now, but thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to keep teaching you the rest of this week. Thanks, guys. Bye.